It's called the Democracy Alliance, and they had a meeting in Chicago last week. Joining us now to discuss it is Lachlan Markay. He works at the Washington Free Beacon. You can follow him at Lachlan, Lachlan, on Twitter. He does great work over there. How you doing, Lachlan?
Hey, how are you, Derek?
I'm doing all right. It's a beautiful day, so can't complain. So the Democracy Alliance, I thought all the evil in the world of politics. I watch MSNBC, so I know where it comes from. It comes from two oil billionaire brothers. Now I come to find out that not only does the left engage in this, they actually have people with a hell of a lot more money who spend a hell of a lot more of it on politics. Tell us about the Democracy Alliance.
Sure. It's probably, the most influential political group you've never heard of. That was pretty apparent in Chicago last week. I went out there for their conference with one other Free Beacon reporter, and the only other reporter there covering it was Ken Vogel over at Politico. So hats off to him, but you'd think it would be getting more coverage because this is a group of essentially the most elite and wealthy gathering of left-wing donors that there is.
And these are big money donors. These aren't, $50 get to the potluck dinner donors. These are lots of zeros on these checks.
Yeah, we're talking hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars in political contributions, just that we know of. That's the candidates and entities that report their donors. There's a lot more, like what goes on at the Democracy Alliance, that's much more sort of shrouded in mystery. And they don't actually accept contributions themselves, but what they do is they sort of link up donors with what they call their favored organizations. Groups like Media Matters, the Center for American Progress, Priorities USA, the creme de la creme of lefty activist groups.
So they're essentially a traffic cop. They find them people with the money, and they find the organizations, they find the common interests, and they put them together.
That's right, and they do it in a way, it's a very sort of planned out and coherent strategy for which groups are going to be most effective at accomplishing these set of objectives. How can we disperse money in ways that's going to produce tangible results at the ballot box, in terms of policy goals and so on.
And now the Democracy Alliance is a very secretive organization, even though, they talk about American AFP, Americans for Prosperity, or Freedom Works, whatever. All the dark money, Karl Rove's group, the dark money. We don't know who the donors are. Democracy Alliance they don't tell you who their members are. They don't tell you do we know anything about them, or do they, because I read in your story that Ken Vogel was roughed up.
He was.
Trying to talk to somebody. The security there roughed him up.
He was trying to talk to Jonathan Soros, son of the George Soros, who's a big player in this organization. We sort of get details that trickle out from time to time about what they're doing, who's involved. I wrote my story up after I found a piece of paper on the floor there that went over some of their new members, these people who are sort of coming to these meetings to then funnel money to these groups. There's been other details reported. We had a big series at the Free Beacon a year or two ago based on a list that we had gotten of people who were involved. I would suggest checking that out if you get the chance. Vogel over at Politico has reported some good details. Even the Huffington Post had a good story about him a year or two ago. So there are details out there, but they do everything in their power to make sure that everything that goes on there is as secretive as possible.
Now I was surprised, not really surprised, but the head of the American Federation of Teachers, Randy Weingarten, some of the members on this list that we were able to find out, that you were able to find out, seem like people who shouldn't be able to pony up the kind of money that is required to be a part of this, such as Randy Weingarten of the American Federation of Teachers, is listed as donating $100,000. Now, I know that union bigwigs are paid well, but well enough to give away $100,000?
Right. Well, that occurred to me as well, and I reached out to Democracy Alliance. Unfortunately, they didn't want to explain anything to me. They didn't return my calls. But I would imagine that what that suggests is you have a couple folks from AFT and some other union guys on there. I think you'd probably find that it's the unions themselves that are donating the money to these groups. Certainly, unions like the SEIU, Communications Workers of America, AFT, give a lot of money to these left-wing groups. So they're probably doing so to an extent through the Democracy Alliance. In other words, they go to them and they say, hey, we want to donate X million of, however many millions of dollars to Can you help us out in deciding which ones are most deserving or will make the best use of it? So I would imagine that's what's going on there.
Right, of course. It's just you need to buy a seat at the table, and somebody, it doesn't matter where the money comes from. But as we're talking with Lachlan Markay of the Washington Free Beacon, when you look at this, it's not just money given to groups like Center for American Progress. They write a report saying the Keystone Pipeline will kill us all, or Media Matters writing a report saying Fox News will kill us all. It's actually a lot of money goes to groups that campaign too, right?
You know, it's really unclear at this point. Certainly there was some super PAC activity in 2012. Joe Biden actually went to a Democracy Alliance meeting and sort of begged them to start contributing to super PACs. But, of course, super PACs are not technically electioneering organizations. They're sort of issue advocacy. So from a purely legal perspective, I'm not sure at this point that we can say they're getting directly involved in elections. But, of course, you know, there's so much information that they refuse to share. It's really impossible to know exactly what the extent of their activities are, whether they have given money to groups that do get involved in elections directly. You know, they're not. The Democracy Alliance is not actually an official organization. As far as I know, very little exists on paper. It's more of sort of an informal gathering of these very powerful left-wing figures. So they may not be bound by some of the restrictions that apply to, say, a Center for American Progress, but we honestly don't know how involved in elections they are.
It's amazing. Lastly, how many of the known groups that are associated with the Democracy Alliance are actively advocating for full disclosure of donors from other groups, you know, calling for more transparency, the ultimate hypocrisy?
Yeah, pretty much all of them. That's sort of a common theme, and it's amazing the sort of cognitive dissonance that goes on there. You know, very often you find that they'll say, you know, our donors are different. You know, we shouldn't be held to the same standard because we are very altruistic and we just want to save the planet and help working people, whereas the Koch brothers and evil conservatives want to kill regulations and lower taxes on the rich.
Well, it's Tom Steyer's logic, the billionaire who wants to kill the Keystone Pipeline. What he's advocating for won't help his bottom line, but the Koch brothers, on the other hand, are the opposite. Meanwhile, he's invested in green technology that he wants to force the government to buy. It's very interesting. When you set the unit of measure, it's amazing how well you come out looking. Lachlan Markay of the Washington Free Beacon, appreciate you. Keep on this trail because it leads somewhere, and it'll be very interesting to see where the last breadcrumb lies.
Will do. Thanks for having me, Dave.
Thank you. There you go. It's that hypocrisy that absolutely drives me nuts. It's the